Hello and welcome to the Higher Choice Summit, where we look at how to live a balanced and fulfilling life beyond stress, anxiety and overwhelm, and handle life's challenges with more certainty and trust. My name's Christine Hart-Savage, and we're here to bring you knowledge, stories and information so that you can make the higher choice in your life. Today's topic is Therapeutic Breathwork, the doorway to well-being right under your nose. Our very special guest is Dr. Jim Morningstar. Jim is the Director of Transformations Incorporated. He's been a licensed clinical psychologist since 1973. He is a clinical supervisor, a seminar leader, and has been a pioneer in the integration of psychotherapy with such mind-body techniques as therapeutic breathwork and also biospiritual energetics. Sounds very interesting, doesn't it? He founded the School of Integrative Psychology in 1980 and the Transformations Breathworker Training Program in 1990. He's the author of 4 books in the field of spiritual psychology. He's the co-director of the Global Professional Breathwork Alliance and founder of In Wellness. Jim's 33 years of courses in integrative psychology are available online through his training programs. And Jim also travels and teaches internationally. Welcome, Dr. Jim Morningstar. It's great to have you on the show, Jim.
Thank you so much, Christine. I'm honored to be on the summit. You've put together quite a power-packed gift to the world, and I feel blessed to participate and support you in this.
Thank you. That was lovely. Thank you. So, Jim, just so we can get to know you a little bit, can you give us some of your story? Like, why did you decide to do psychology? And then how did you find your way to breathwork?
Well, actually from very young, I knew that I had a calling to work with people. And psychology provided the platform for me to work in various different ways, use the scientific part of myself, as well as more of an artistic or interpersonal way of connecting with people. So I pursued psychology along with interest in many diverse other things, but that was my major and I stuck with it through graduate school. However, by the time I ended graduate school and had learned about the traditional ways of doing psychotherapy, I was about done, because I could not envision myself simply sitting in a room talking with people continuously about their problems and giving advice. It didn't seem that I was growing and fulfilling myself or giving the best I could to others. 2 days after completing the doctorate degree, my wife and I were on an airplane to Africa.
Well,
We just needed, I said, I either have to go into 3 years of psychoanalysis or go to Africa. I don't know why those are the choices, but it's something about getting back to roots. And in Africa, I decided that's what I would do. Both of my parents came from a farm. I said, I've got to get out of my head and back to the earth. Get my fingernails dirty, as it were. And we came back, and that's what we did. We got 3 huge garden plots, and we were moving to California because in the desert, I had found a book called Monday Night Class by Stephen Gaskin. And it talked about a conscious evolution that was going on, a revolution and evolution that was going on in the country. And I thought, now that's really exciting.
So that really pulled you. Yeah.
It did. And so we're on the way to California. But unfortunately, we had brought back some little microbes from Africa and needed to stay in our hometown of Milwaukee in order to recuperate for a while. Along with that, I began to find other ways of self-exploring and growth akin to this Monday Night Class book that I had read. There was bioenergetics and Gestalt and things that involved feelings and movement and breathing and vocalizing. And I thought, now this is something of interest to me. And
Mm.
so I had taken a part-time job just in order to make enough money to go to California, back at the hospital that I worked at. And well, 5 months became 5 years. And I stayed on because I could start practicing these things that were so exciting in terms of working with people, doing bioenergetics, which involved a lot of breathing and inner exploration. And then breath work came along. And breath work put it all together. Breath work for me, well, I was somewhat of a wise guy in those days, and I thought I was learning all sorts of new stuff, and I thought, well, okay, this is very exciting, but I'll probably be on to new things next month. Well, that's been since 1972, and I haven't found the limits of breath work and where it can take us. So
Wow.
I went to all of the trainings that I could. There was nothing in the Midwest at the time. There were California, Louisiana, New York, and began incorporating that into my practice of working with people, which I still do today, this week. Even though I have slowed down in terms of the amount of individual sessions that I do with people, I'm in quotes semi-retirement, I'm still very active in training, doing breathworker training and sharing these skills, because to me, it's the greatest gift that I can give other people, is a gift of self-empowerment, where they learn to use breath awareness and breath modulation to control their mind, to regulate their emotions, and to open their spiritual centers.
Yes.
It's the whole package.
I think it's one of the fastest ways to really find yourself, isn't it? And as you said, you're never just there. It just keeps expanding and growing and expanding and growing, and you find more and more and more. I mean, you look fantastic, Jim. You look really good. You look absolutely brilliant. So you're a walking advertisement for it.
Thank you.
And I first met you, we were just talking off air, you know, we first met in 1997, wasn't it, in Austria? Yes. Yeah, it was when we met, and once since then. So, I mean, you don't look any different. You look amazing. That's all the
Flattery will get you everywhere. I just want to warn you. So, well, actually, I find that in the breathwork community, is that people that I have not seen for years, it's the vitality that we initiate with our breath. I'm now not traveling as much as I used to. I am doing video conferencing and working with trainers in other parts of the world. And so recently, I was working with a group of women who, again, are usually the people who are in the vanguard of new movements. But these are women in the Middle East, women in some of the most, you might say, conservative
Yes.
countries in the world, where the word energy is outlawed, actually, in their country. Yeah. But they jumped right into the breathwork training. They jumped right in, they came alive. And one of the feedback that I had from one of the women there, she said, Jim, you're not handsome, but you're beautiful. I took that as a high compliment. It's like, yes.
That is gorgeous.
Yeah, right. So we can continue person by person spreading that idea of self-empowerment, and it will change governments. It will change the consciousness, how we do business. I see that happening all over the world.
Yeah, boy, do we need it. Yeah. Now, Jim, can you tell us what exactly is therapeutic breath work?
Okay, well, first of all, the breathwork movement started in the 70s, which is simply a bringing together of age-old techniques. Breath has been used for healing and for conscious growth for 3,000 years in India, in China, Qigong in China. There are conservatively 3,000 different breathing techniques. And some
Wow.
say it may be 10,000 breathing techniques that the Taoists and the Qigong have developed. So it's been used for health and well-being there. The modern movement, though, has taken something new. There is something new under the sun. We're not just copying all of the things in the past, because in the past you'd have a teacher or a practitioner who was the embodiment of the knowledge, who would impart it to students who then, as they grew, would impart it to others.
Yes.
We have now a way that we have grown in consciousness that people do this with one another. They learn to do it themselves and they do it with each other. I've never seen an Egyptian hieroglyph where people are practicing medicine on one another. You know, it's always the physician that knows. And to be sure, we do need trainers and we need practitioners in order to learn the skill, but as soon as possible, then it's self-administered and it's shared with other people. So breath work has taken the best of what we've known from these time-honored traditions and put it together with some modern techniques of relationship and even neuroscience now. Therapeutic breath work, I coined that term, incorporates many of the ancient techniques with a lot of the current techniques, both in slower than normal and faster than normal breathing. Mindfulness has done a wonderful job, and coherent breathing has done wonderful jobs in terms of using the meditative practice of slower than normal breathing. And it's helpful in so many different areas of health, but also psychological and emotional well-being. Faster than normal breathing, though, has been looked on rather suspiciously by the medical practice because it innervates the sympathetic nervous system. Whereas the slower than normal breathing innervates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is calm and controlled. However, that calm and controlled breathing cannot often touch areas of trauma, areas that have been buried and guarded by our psyche and by holding patterns in our nervous system. And so consciously to go in, judiciously and consciously, using faster than normal breathing, innervates the sympathetic nervous system to get to areas in the subconscious that you could spend countless decades talking about, but never truly open up. And this is what we've learned about how trauma works in our bodies.
You mentioned there about you can talk about it for decades, but never really getting anywhere with it. So it's about, can you say more about that? Let's take it a little bit deeper. So about the charge, the emotional charge that's attached to that. Can you speak a little bit about that and how it releases that?
Well, what we're learning now in neuroscience, we've known in practice all along, but it's being confirmed. And that is,
that's terrific. That's the great part.
It is. Yeah. And so the vagus nerve, which controls 80% of the nerves in our body, has 3 levels to it, as it were. The most primitive level is the one that we share with reptiles. And it's a parasympathetic system that when our organism gets in extreme danger and there's no ability to escape or to fight, it shuts the system down. And when it shuts the system down, the midbrain cuts off connections to the prefrontal cortex. And so experiences go into our memory, but not conscious memory. It's called implicit only memory. And they stay in our system so that in the future, if there are other things that stimulate a similar danger, we go into a fight or flight reflex.
Yeah.
The fight or flight is the second stage of the vagus nerve, and it's used whenever our amygdala, our smoke detector, our early warning system says there's danger. And that happens faster than we can consciously be aware of. So we go into the activating system of fight or flight. Again, the cognitive processes are secondary, if not totally turned off, just to save the organism. However, these memories then get stored in implicit only memory, and our conscious mind will do everything possible to take care of ourselves, except open that cellar door, which it doesn't know how to do.
Yes, yes.
And that's where the fear and the defense mechanisms have held it down. That's why talking and being touched and being empathized with are all very good things, and they can help in the process. But to get to that part of our brain which has actually been frozen, is walled off sometimes for till the person may be 50, 60, 70 years old, or never.
Yeah.
So that's why when we use the faster than normal breathing, we can start to open up those areas that bypass the conscious workings of our brain and allow us to safely go in and reprogram some of the things that have been stored and still affecting our lives, because it takes energy to hold ourselves in a defensive posture. And when things are re-stimulated there, we start to do irrational behaviors. We have prejudices, we say, or habits that we use to tend to ourselves, which don't make sense logically, but we hang on to for fear that we would again be re-traumatized.
Yes.
So this is where, over the years, I did not learn a lot of trauma or childhood sexual abuse work in graduate school in 1970. But I started practicing and working with people, and I was flooded with it. As John Bradshaw said, there is no incest taboo in our culture. There's just a taboo about talking about how much of it there is. And that's only one form of trauma. And so I had to learn by the seat of my pants. And breath work was a tool that helped people safely open up the doors of their fear, reprogram them, and be in control of those areas of their life, which was running their life subconsciously.
Yes.
So therapeutic breath work, we use both the slower than normal breathing, which is the right breath for the right circumstance, but also the faster than normal breathing. So we have the full range, and we teach people how to self-regulate and how to know when to use it, and then when to see someone else, because they want that support from another person in doing deep exploring.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that was beautifully said. So how do you use breathwork in your personal life? And you've sort of explained what you do with your business life. So how has it been for you? Like when you first learned breathwork, and it's one of those things that you never stop learning, isn't it? It's you know, you've got so much knowledge, so much wisdom now, Jim, but it just keeps expanding because you find new pockets of yourself and new different ways of doing things that expand and expand. So what is something that you do in your life with breathing?
That was very well put, what you said, because breath work always takes us into new areas if we're open to it. See, for me, breath work is not about what you know, but it's about what you're willing to release. So it's the releasing tool par excellence. So I use it every day personally, and then I also use it professionally. Personally, I do some form of conscious breathing every morning and every evening. And actually, when I can, which is most of the time, I have a hot tub in the basement and a bathtub in the house, and I do the breathing in water. Now, I don't do it extensively for an hour or half an hour, but maybe 10 minutes or so, I will do some connected breathing and working with my energy systems. It's a maintenance program.
Yeah, and it's working.
Oh, absolutely. And then I will use visualization with it. Inner child is a very powerful form of visualization. That can, the beautiful thing about breath work is that it's not something that's just unto itself, that's all you do. Because people in every healing profession use different forms of breath work and adapt it to their profession. I happen to be trained as a psychotherapist. So I will work with people and I will notice from the walking in the door, how are they breathing? How are they comfortable in their skin? And they're noticing the same thing about me, by the way, too. We all notice that of one another. It's just how we be aware. And if I can be comfortable with my breathing, it helps them to be more open and safe in their sharing.
Yes.
I will listen. If it seems appropriate, I will start to introduce usually some slower than normal breathing to start with. A very simple type of breath is breathing up the back and down the front. As a matter of fact, this reminds me, you said that I would have the opportunity to give some things away free.
Yes.
In this interview. And 3 of the techniques that I use regularly, I am giving away free.
That's a great gift, Jim. Yeah.
Right. So the circular breathing I do up the back and down the front, I do this, I will teach this to my clients. And if they're comfortable with it, and if it looks like they are ready to explore more deeply, I will suggest we do an exploratory session of faster than normal breathing. Now, the way I do this, there's many schools actually, well, not many, there's relatively few on the planet that do faster than normal breathing, but some have the style of that you must breathe a certain amount of breaths a minute. And, you know, faster than normal breathing can be 30 to 70 breaths a minute. Slower than normal breathing, you can go to 4 to 5 breaths a minute. And so some schools, though, will require people to breathe very fast for a very long period of time. I'm a little different in that way. I will stay tuned with the body and what their body themes are saying. So there's 6 major body themes that I work with professionally. And this came from bioenergetics before I ever got into breath work. It's what is this body telling me right now? What is their holding patterns telling me? Because a full breath for one body theme will be hardly breathing at all for a different body theme. So there's not one size fits all way to have people breathe. If you're sensitive to what their themes are and how they incorporate them and how they enliven themselves with their breath, you can start where they're at.
Yes.
And then work from there so that they can expand. But they may never breathe as fully as it looks like someone else is breathing, but for themselves, they're breathing at their maximum. With some people, though, they may come in, I see some people for marital counseling, but I will still share with them something about the breath, how they can be aware of one another as people, or how they can include each other in their circular breathing. And so they can get in tune with another person vibrationally by using their breath.
Yes, yes. It's amazing how it can melt the issue away. Yeah, yeah. Now, we're coming to the end of our time. I mean, I could speak to you forever. This is just brilliant. But can you share with our viewers, typically, how does a person feel after their session? Like, what are the benefits that they get? So when they're leaving, how do they usually feel?
Well, I usually like to have people come to a plateau when they breathe. The breathing session starts out with just getting comfortable with it, because it's kind of weird breathing and someone's watching you, you know. But as soon as that passes, then they get into inner exploring. And then we want to bring the session to a closure so that they feel complete for that time. But that time may be just a beginning that opens the door for further times that are down the road. And things may happen after the session that opens up some more things. So I'm always very solicitous that my clients know how to connect with me. Very seldom do they do that between sessions, but it's comforting for them to know that they can. Yes. Because we go for self-empowerment. I do not push people beyond what they can handle at a particular time and incorporate. Yeah. And so generally they feel released. Generally they feel a great sense of, oh my goodness, I didn't know I could feel this relaxed without falling asleep.
Yes. It's incredible.
Relaxed and energized at the same time.
Yes.
Imagine that. Right, right.
What I love is that the way they walk out with a smile on their face. You know, yes. It's like, oh, yeah.
Now, sometimes the smile on the face and the relief comes from opening up areas that might actually have been uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so even though they have explored an area or remembered something that was uncomfortable, it was a great relief to finally be able to talk about that or to let that go. So I'm not shooting for everyone feeling excited and happy. That may not be the most useful thing for them, but they feel contained and they feel content and they feel self-empowered.
Yeah.
That's the state that I'm looking for at the end of a session, particularly that they feel more confidence and accepting of themselves.
Yes. And that sense of relief, it is powerful, isn't it? That, you know, we've experienced that so many times in my life where it's like, oh, it's a freedom. It's like, oh, it's like letting go of a load. You feel lighter.
The surprising thing about it is that what we normally think of as relaxed is our general state of tension. And I don't even know that I can be so much more relaxed than I thought I could. Yeah. What I considered being relaxed was just less tense than when I'm on the roof.
Yes, exactly.
But to recognize, wait a minute, there's whole levels of my being that, because breath work, when people come in, often it's because, well, they've got an issue. They want to deal with something. Yeah. And sometimes they think, well, you know, now I'm breathing and nothing comes up. I just feel good. I must be done. Saying, oh, you're opening the door for the second stage of breath work, yes, which is now the ability to explore, yeah, and to find areas of your psyche, of your emotional body, of your spiritual self.
Yes.
That you've just been waiting for permission to open up.
Yeah.
That is why we have the greatest job on earth, Christine.
Absolutely, we do. It's a real blessing, I think. Yeah. Jim, thank you so much for joining us today. You've told us about your gift. So for our viewers that are watching now, you can click on the link below to download Jim's free gift. So that was the 3 different types of breathing, which is just brilliant. I mean, have a look at Jim. You know it works. He looks terrific.
Thank you.
Again, Jim,
well,
thank you so much.
And if people wanted to further explore this before actually signing up to do it, I finally completed my life work last year, which is Breakthrough with Breathwork, a book. That can be a tip also for people, Breakthrough with Breathwork. And you can read the stories of people.
Yeah.
It's full of stories of people who have taken the ball and run with it themselves, like you have done, Christine.
Yeah.
You have really taken the ball and run with it. I'm so elated by how you are a shining example. Like you said, since 97 that we've seen one another, and what you've done with it and how you're sharing it with the world and bringing it into the world of health. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. Yeah. And thank you so much for being on the summit. Really have loved having you. Blessing. Yeah. Thank
My
you.
pleasure.